All right, so we're going to be going over System TES, Talmud Sefirot, Part 1, Tzimtzum Restriction and Kav Line, and we're continuing 1.2 again, but we'll first do the preparation slides. The rules to understand Talmud Sefirot. So we've got unnecessary, which is when we think that it's talking about things which are external to us, a spiritual reality in another dimension, attainable only by Kabbalists. And to make it necessary, we have to understand that it's talking about internal, our perception of the reality we live in with our physical body in this world. Impossible is when we think it's talking about the past, that is, states that happened in the past when the will to receive cascaded to our world. And we make this possible when we understand it's talking about the future. These are states of perception we go through on our path of spiritual advancement. And secrets is when we think it's talking about others, that it's not about me, but someone or something else, some creature or some other people or some Kabbalist kind of story. And we make this disclosed when we understand it's talking about us, it's talking about our ego, it's about me and how I perceive reality. If there's any questions, feel free to stop me at any time.
No, it's just like putting on an old shirt. It feels comfortable.
And I repeat these every time because it's just to slowly get it into our psyche of always looking. And these rules can be applied on anything in Kabbalah, of making it from external to internal, from the past to the future, and from talking about others, it's talking about me. The phases. So we have preparation, which is called Keter, crown, the thought of creation, the root phase. Then we have phase 1, humanity, which is called Chachma, wisdom. And we normally see this talked about as a vessel with an arrow going in, that it's receiving filling. And these phases are called 1.1 and 1.2. 1.1 is unformed and unformed, and 1.2 is chaos in unformed. Then we get to a point where our passive point in the heart awakens, and we feel unhappy in humanity. And this is when we enter the phases 1.3 and 1.4, which is darkness in unformed and spirit in unformed. And then we reach phase 2, which is the spiritual society, which is called Bina, understanding. This is phase 2. This is where it's shown whether you have the vessel and the arrow going out, which means that the vessel wants to bestow and not receive. And this is called... Jeffrey, can you mute?
Okay, there we go.
Thank you. And this is the phases 2.1 and 2.2, which is unformed in chaos and chaos in chaos. At some point, our active point in the heart awakens, and this is called 2.3 and 2.4, which is darkness in chaos and spirit in chaos. And then we find ourselves in a group to clean concepts. This is called Tiferet, beauty. And these are shown where you have a vessel where it's, on one hand, it's receiving internal power, but at the same time, it's bestowing, like in phase 2, it's bestowing external filling. And these are called 3.1 and 3.2, which is unformed in darkness and chaos in darkness. And then at some point, our point in the heart gets intensified. And these are 3.3 and 3.4, which is darkness in darkness, which is one of the most painful, and spirit in darkness. Then we reach phase 4, which is the individual, which is called Malchut, kingdom. This is represented by a bold arrow going in, which is talking about receiving internal power in totality. And we understand that the bestowing will be as a result, because we'll become the creator. And these are represented by phases 4.1 and 4.2, which is unformed in spirit and chaos in spirit. And then we reach the point where we're starting to internalize our entire reality within us. And these are called 4.3 and 4.4, which is darkness in spirit and spirit in spirit. And spirit in spirit is called the phase of boundless light. And here's the summary of the phases before the barrier. So we had preparation, which is Keter, crown, root phase, thought of creation. Then we have Chokhmah, wisdom, phase 1, humanity unformed. Then we have Bina, understanding, phase 2, spiritual society, chaos, passive point in the heart. Then we have Tiferet, beauty, phase 3, group, darkness, active point in the heart. And then we have Malchut, kingdom, phase 4, individual, spirit, intense point in the heart. And then we pass the barrier. So let's go over the narrative. So in the beginning, when we're in the root phase, preparation, in reality, a person is in reality attracting external filling. That means we're born into humanity, phase 1. This is called Hamshacha, attraction. It's also called Kabbalah, which is reception in reality. But then the point in the heart awakens. And we find that humanity isn't working out for us as we thought it would. And then the person joins a society to learn how to bestow. He joins the spiritual society, which is phase 2. However, the person feels no spiritual success in the society. The society still isn't able to give the person everything he thought it would give him. So then the person joins a group to clean concepts together. This is called phase 3, the group. Until the point in the heart becomes so intense that the person works with individual friends as well, which is phase 4, the individuals. As a result, from intense desire to become the creator, humanity is internalized into the person through clothing. It's the result. It's not an action we have to actually do. It's the result of being so egoistically, intensively wanting to receive the primacy of the creator. Then the spiritual society is internalized. Yes, Mark?
Can you go back or finish, please? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you can go back. What do you want me to go back to?
The very beginning of this, in 1.
Yeah?
Yes. At this stage, what causes the point in the heart to be activated? Because I'm sure many of us, or I guess I can't speak for many of us, I've always felt for almost ever since I can ever remember, even being a little kid, that something was wrong, something wasn't right. There was more. There was something that I wanted to reach for, but it took me all these years, 60-some years, to come to this point. And I'm just curious.
Well, the idea is that when you actually came to the society, right, just before that, that's when the point in the heart awakened. That means that you could no longer put it aside. So all the years beforehand, you might have been a little hungry, but you were able to push it aside and do other things and maybe have a family and get a job and do so many things in reality, even though you had this little thing which is nagging you and bothering you. But it wasn't intense enough. It didn't reach the status of passive for it to make you actually starting to do something, to change your life, to actually move yourself around and actually go and do things, right? So we may have little nagging things, but if it's just nagging, it's not important enough to us to actually deal with it, right? It's like when someone is feeling a little sick. It's not important for him to go to the doctor yet. He's like, okay, so I'm a little sick. Then he gets more sick. He's like, it's just probably something that'll pass. It gets to a point where you can no longer put it aside, and that's where he goes to the doctor. So think of the spiritual society as that doctor, right? And you don't want to go to that hospital until you reach a point where you're like, oh, okay, I can't put this anymore aside. I need to actually deal with this. And then you find the spiritual society to actually help you deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. So let's continue. So
You can also,
yes,
in that process, though, get lost into different spiritual societies and not find the proper path for a while, too.
that is true. You can get stuck in 2.1, 2.2 for a long time in the spiritual society. The idea is that the transition phase is always between that 2.2 and 2.3, between a 0.2 and a 0.3 of a phase. So just like, in the beginning, a person is reality attracting external feeling. That means he's in 1.1 and 1.2. And he stays in that 1.2 until he reaches that point where his point in the heart becomes passive, and then he enters that darkness where he's feeling, I'm no longer happy, right? That's when the point in the heart nags him enough, he starts to feel that pain, right? And then he starts to do something about it, and then he starts searching. And that is when he reaches that 1.4, and then he finds himself in a society to learn how to bestow. And that's when he reaches that 2.1. And then when he's enough time in the society, now he feels the society is no longer new to him, right? He's already invested in the society. He's probably taken some kind of position. He's doing things in the society. That's when he reaches the 2.2, when he feels like the society is where he needs to be, right? In 2.1, he's still searching, this is still new to him. In 2.2, that's it. I'm in the society. This is where I need to be, and everything's fine. And then at a certain point, however, the person feels no spiritual success. He reaches a point where 2.2 just doesn't cut out for him. The spiritual society is not giving him the sustenance that he needs. At the beginning, he did, right? At the beginning, when he came to the society, everything was all good and dandy. Wow, they're going to actually solve my problems. Then in 2.2, he's investing heavily in the society, and he's doing all different stuff, all different activities, going to congresses, going to the lessons, doing all different dissemination. And then he reaches a point where he just feels like it's not working out. He feels he's just repeating himself, and he doesn't feel that he's advancing anymore. So a person joins a group to clean concepts together. And that's when he reaches that phase 3, that group. And at the beginning, it's like, wow, this is all new, this is great. Then he reaches a point where he's investing heavily in it, and he's getting so much out of it. But then there comes a point where that doesn't cut out for him either. And the point in the heart becomes so intense that he feels that it's not that he can no longer work. Remember, you're still staying in humanity, the spiritual society, and the group. But this is no longer giving him what he needs at that top, at that tip. And that's when the person starts to work with individual friends as well. That is, it's no longer cut for him to just work in a group effort. He wants to work one-on-one with a friend.
So Kai,
yes, go for it.
Is there wrong and right discernments, or is it just an individual's discernment of something?
Well, to say wrong or right, you have to have a goal for it to be wrong or right towards. So one of the first things is that if you don't have a goal, then there's nothing wrong or right. You could just collect any discernments, which is called unnecessary. You need a goal for it to be necessary. And then you define for yourself what are good and bad. Bad discernments are discernments that don't bring you towards the goal. And good discernments are discernments that bring you towards the goal. The good discernments might be painful, and the bad discernments might be enjoyable. So you're not going by good and bad, you're going by truth and falsehood. And that only happens when you have a goal. And then truth becomes what brings you closer to the truth, and falsehood is what keeps you away from the truth.
I'll have to refine my question because I was reading the text earlier in one of the, I think, part 1. But I'll just try to go back and grab that later and rephrase my question because you're hitting on it. I'm just trying, I don't have the text here to
ask. No problem.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. As a result from intense desire to become the creator, we start as a result of our of our attraction, or amshecha, we start to get as a result the clothing, hitlapshut. And humanity is internalized into the person, in the spiritual society, then the group, and individuals. Then they arrive before the barrier. This is the state of the boundless light before the barrier. And then the person passes the barrier as a result of it. So the result is there's a restriction, a tzimtzum, where you go above your ego. You enter the role of becoming the creator as a small amount. That's why it's called the soul. You get your soul, which means part of the creator. You have already minimal adhesion with the system. And this is called creation because you're looking from above. You're looking above your ego and looking at your ego, looking at reality around you and seeing it from above instead of being in it. I can't see the chat, so if there's any questions, just please ask. And then we receive a screen which converts egoism into altruism. So what happens is you've got the haka, the striking, which what happens is it allows the phase for the individual to seep in through the screen, and that screen converts it from being outer light into inner light, from egoism to altruism. It's called orphaning, inner light. Any questions?
A fantastically concise explanation of this.
Thank you. I tried to make it
clears away a lot of mystery. I mean, that 10 minutes, if you could just put that 10, 15 minutes out there, that would tell a lot to a lot of people.
Feel free to cut it out.
Sakai,
yes.
You said that the screen is inverting the excessive egoism into discernment?
Into altruism. Into altruism,
the screen
yeah.
itself does this?
Yeah, the screen itself does the conversion from egoism to altruism.
That's fantastic.
That is, egoism is when you're looking at it from the side of a person in this world, and then altruism is when you're looking at it from the side of the creator.
Oh, I love this.
So that's why when the striking occurs, it starts to refine the screen. It changes the screen itself it changes its coarseness.
Exactly.
So what did you say egoism is looking at from which point?
Egoism is when you're looking at it from a person in this world. That is, even if you're doing altruistic acts as a physical person, that means you're still, your point of view is from a person in this world. It's still called egoism, even though you're thinking you're doing altruistic acts. Because your calculation is still egoistic, no matter how altruistic your acts are.
So we're looking at altruism as a form of bestowal. So I was listening to Michael Kellogg's last lesson on development of the soul, and he said, we don't even know what bestowal is. I went into a real dissent when he just went on about how we can't even figure out what the soul bestowal is. We'll have no concept of it. But that is the whole purpose of this work, is to be focused on bestowal. But if we don't even know what it is, where do we go? We just spinning our wheels?
Most of our work before the barrier is figuring out what is not bestowal. That's why it's called lo lishma. Lo lishma means what is not lishma, what is not in her name, which means what is not bestowal. And that's where you're spending most of the time before the barrier, is figuring out what is not bestowal. And then after the barrier, that's where you're actually spending all your time figuring out what is bestowal.
So we're all in a state of low lishma, right? We can't even understand lishma until we pass the barrier.
Well, you can't emotionally understand it. If you want to emotionally understand it, you have to be in that state. It's like I can talk to you about passing the barrier as much as I want. Until you actually pass it, you won't actually know what it means. You won't actually feel it. And that's what the work is. But the work is to understand where you're going, to understand how to get there, and collect the discernments along the way, what is not bestowal, and figure out what the differences are, to just clean your concepts up to the point where you would actually get the desire to become the bestower. Because if you think you can bestow without becoming the bestower, then why become the bestower? Why become the creator if I can already bestow in this world? So you have to clean your concepts and understand that you can never bestow in this world. And that's a process that you have to clean more and more, because every time you'll think, no, but I can still bestow in this world. And I can still do this in this world. And it's like, no, you can't. You have to become the creator, because he's the quality of bestowal. So if you really want to bestow, you have to have the quality of bestowal in order to bestow. And in this world, we only have the quality of reception, and therefore we can't bestow.
So everything we do that's an act of what we consider bestowal, and I'm even talking about all of humanity, is really nothing other than just an expression of our ego and self-satisfaction. Is that
exactly. Exactly. And it doesn't matter how many calculations we're trying to do below the barrier of trying to bestow, it's still going to be in order to receive. Like, even if you make the whole world happy, at the end of the day, the reason is because you want to be happy yourself as a person. And that's part of the revelation of evil, is just figuring out how egoistical we are and cleaning our concepts to understand that the only way we can actually bestow is if we become the creator, if we have the primacy of the creator.
Why is this so difficult for us? I mean, we're in a state of Malkut and Sof. Why can't we just get that dust out of our eyes? What is it?
Well, the truth is you're not in that state of Malchut and Sof until you actually reach that state before the barrier, which is the boundless light. That's what we're learning here. So most of humanity is in phase 1. And in the spiritual society, we're in phase 2. And then when we reach the group, which is darkness, then we're in phase 3. And then when we reach the individual, which is phase 4.
So what phase do we have to wait till we realize we're in Malkut and Sof? I thought we were like right there and we were just like blinded by it, or just like deceiving ourselves with our ego that we're there.
Well, that's exactly the thing. You need to reveal that you're there. Beforehand, you're just in concealment. You only reveal that you're in boundless light in phase 4 and 4, which I call 4.4. It's that final state before the barrier. That's boundless light.
Where's the Rav?
What do you mean?
What state is he in? Where is he?
Well, he's after the barrier.
He is.
Get there and find out.
Why can't, well, why can't he pull us? Why doesn't he? What's holding us back? Is he trying to pull us?
What's holding you back is yourself, and that's part of the work to find out that the only one actually stopping you is yourself. At the beginning, we think it's other people, it's society, right? That's called unnecessary. Then we think it's our past holding us back, and it's called impossible. Right? We have to slowly internalize and get to the point where we understand the only one stopping myself is myself.
Well, I think I'm past the point of blaming others, but the part of the past, that's the hardest one to resolve. Because that's the ritual that comes up.
It is hard to get past that. That's the idea of the cleaning the concepts will help you get past that. When you understand why the past isn't holding you back, that's when you'll let go of the past and actually move to the future.
It's a matter of the amount of concepts and the quality of the cleaning we do too, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of work for us.
You could have someone cleaning your house for hours and he's done a terrible job. You could have someone who cleaned your house for 10 minutes and he's cleaned it pristine clean.
Yeah, exactly.
So can't we just get in a state of hastening time and move this thing along?
That's the state of hastening time, is cleaning your concepts with quality and quantity.
Okay, so I'm going around in a circle here.
Exactly.
Quality and quantity. That's what people don't want to do. They want to do one or the other, right?
Right.
Like a guy used to tell me, I do 3 kinds of work: good, quick, and cheap, but I only could do 2 types at a time.
Zach, I have a question.
Yes, feel free.
When you talk about the screen or this striking, is it the rejection of that feeling, the rejection of that desire that's trying to be filled at that time?
Well, you're already above your ego. Remember that when you get in that restriction, that means you're going above your ego, right? And you no longer want filling. You want power. And that's what it means to convert egoism to altruism. Altruism is power, and egoism is filling. And that's why when you're trying to, that's why if you're trying to bestow in this world, what are you trying to bestow? You're trying to bestow filling. You're trying to give other people money. You're trying to give them a shelter. You're trying to give them, good feelings, right? That's called filling. And what you really understand is that what people actually need is power. Once people have the power to do the things they want, then they can be self-powered. They can do the things that they want without needing somebody else to do it for them. Or they can get other people to do it for them, but they don't see it as they're receiving. They're seeing it as if they're using others to empower themselves. And that's why we have to gain that internal power, but actually become the creator, and then we can empower others instead of just giving others filling.
So really, there's none else beside you. I mean, we're really at that state where we are the creator. What's stopping us from realizing that? What are we doing?
Cleaning our concepts. We have to clean our concepts. That's the whole idea. Phase 3 is cleaning concepts, and I'll repeat that 100 times. The whole idea is that, and anything we're doing is just to enable situations that will allow us to clean our concepts. But at the end of the day, if you don't clean your concepts, you won't advance.
Yeah. When we're dealing on a spiritual level, which we are, I mean, there's nothing really, there's no time and space that's holding us back from cleaning these concepts until we focus on the physical, on the corporeal side, and then we're going to get stuck, right?
You can go as fast as you want. There's no one stopping you apart from yourself and the speed. The thing is to understand that, to realize that you can't just be like, oh, I'll just, intensely discern, as fast as I can. It's like, you got to, don't burn yourself out. Take your time, do the discernments. Also, there's also importance to having space between discernments, right? It's not just about collecting.
It's like if you go too fast, you rub yourself raw with sandpaper.
Exactly.
It gets a little overwhelming, I feel.
And then you can break.
Right. You have to take and give yourself a break to recover some.
Exactly. It's
right.
I would say it's okay to relax or plateau on each phase. It's just how long you relax and plateau, right? So you're always relaxing and plateauing on some degree because you're always just having those moments of relaxation. That's fine. You could say it's only really plateauing when you're plateauing for too long, and it's going. A few days have gone by and you haven't. If you're not collecting, you should be collecting at least a few discernments a day, and if you're not, then you're probably plateauing.
Yeah, it's funny because if I move fast, I feel like I'm plateauing and I haven't absorbed. First, I feel like I've absorbed a lot and I'm really progressing along. Then all of a sudden, boom, I feel like I'm plateauing and I haven't learned a thing. I haven't got anything. It all seems to be like gone.
That's actually a good sign. That means that if you feel that you're plateauing, then you're not plateauing, first of all. Because those who are actually plateauing don't feel they're plateauing. They think that they're doing everything right. So if you're feeling it, that's a good sign. And it is just always continue and allow those shifts in you, those descents and ascents to happen with you. And it's all about just increasing the pace. I just released a translation of that. From the Talks, the Steps, the Ladder. I think it's 24, 23. Can't remember.
So, Zakaya, can we refine this word discernment a little bit? It's different than the impression I get. That's oh boy, I see that within myself, that attribute or characteristic or my ego, and so I want to. I don't know what I want to do, but I want to convert that egoism into bestow. So, these discernments you said earlier you had to have a goal. So should everybody's discernments be in relationship to the goal?
Exactly.
Devkut. So an impression that I'm getting that, we're sharing and things just prick you, that, oh boy, I see that piece of the puzzle fall in my past life or something. That is not a discernment. That's
not a discernment because, let's say, for example, I said to you, in your previous reincarnation, you were a magnificent king. Or I said to you, you were the most altruistic person on earth. Does that even help you in any way whatsoever today to actually get to the goal?
Flattery, but no.
Exactly. So that's why it's not a discernment. The discernments are what will get me to the goal. Right? That's why we say that there's Israel, there's the Creator, the goal, and there's Torah in the middle to actually get you from your desire to the Creator, which is Israel, Yashar Kel, desire to go straight to the Creator, and you've got Torah, which are the discernments to get you from A to B.
So discernments are not abstract so much. They're like methods, or like if I were to say, methods or a technique, or
their thoughts, their realizations, their feelings of how am I going to clean my concepts to get me as fast as possible to pass the barrier. Because the only thing stopping you from reaching end of correction is discernments. The whole way is collecting discernments. The road is the same. The way you advance on that is by collecting those discernments. And those discernments convert into a desire. The result of discernments is a desire. And then you move to the next phase. And you collect discernments again. It becomes a desire. You advance to the next phase.
So discernments can, like you were saying, a discernment can either be a bad or good discernment. So that's the quality of it. But really, we have to decide whether the discernment is good or bad. But Okay, that I guess has to do with our spiritual maturity, so to speak.
It's normally called truth or falsehood. So you have a true
Or
discernment
false,
and a
right?
false discernment,
Okay, yeah,
which
okay.
is above the feeling of good and bad.
So what
At
do
the
we
same
do?
time, though, don't we need to use the group to take and get an objective view of what our concepts are and what our discernment might be?
That's where you collect the discernments from.
Right.
You're not going to just collect the discernments on yourself. You are where you are. So any discernment you actually come up will just be a discernment of your current state. The whole idea is that's the idea of going outside of yourself and collecting discernments that the Creator is sending to you outside of your state. And that's why we need the group. That's why we need the society.
But from all four phases, even humanity, right? We collect discernments.
Exactly. Humanity, spiritual society, group, and individuals.
So
Yeah, it's interesting, to try to see that everybody is me, because in my cab I get, all the, regular people, but then I get the pimps, the drug dealers, and the hookers, right? And that's me. Going out to turn a trick, right? That's cool,
Exactly.
man. So I'm working on all this. I go, this is good. I step aside, right?
The most quality discernments you'll get, though, the most quality discernments you'll get are from the higher phases. So the most qualitative discernments you get from the individual, then the next qualitative discernment is from the group, the next qualitative is from the spiritual society, and then finally from humanity.
I heard all that.
Depends where we are, what we get, right?
Exactly. What were you saying, me?
I just said I heard all of that, and I still can feel confusion on this discernment, and I want to understand it more. I want to feel it. I want to know it, and
that's also discernment.
This I need a manual of damn discernments. This discernment. I don't know.
Well, you're collecting now a discernment because you don't know what is discernments to get you to the goal. That's also a discernment to make, right? Many times you'll get to a point where you have no clue what to do. That's also discernment, because then what will happen is they accumulate, right? So you accumulate states where you understand things, and then you accumulate states where you don't understand anything, and that's also discernment. And Rav Lightman writes in the Talks of Steps Ladder, the one that translated, that it's about collecting discernments between what is the will to bestow and what is the will to receive, right? And that's why he says that you can find them the most in the society, right? Because and the group is in the society, remember, and the individuals are in that group. So you collect them in the society because that's what society is dealing with. The society deals with the will to bestow, right? You come into the society with the will to receive. And the combination, dichotomies, and relationships between them, those are the discernments you need to advance. All right, let's continue. Chapter 1.2, Reason for Passing the Barrier. So we'll talk about attraction and clothing. So attraction is called hamshacha in Hebrew, which is also reception, called Kabbalah, and vessel, called kli. And the idea is that a vessel, it wants to receive things inside the vessel, just like we have, a container, it receives things inside the container. Right? That's called attraction. That's what we do, remember, in humanity. We're trying to receive things. We're repelling things we don't like, and we're receiving things we do like, attracting them. And attracting also situations, right? Clothing is called hitlapshut in Hebrew, bestowal, which is hashpa'ah, and light, which is or. That is when I'm trying to go outside the vessel, and I'm trying to influence, affect, bestow, and clothe things outside of my vessel, right? And we, in humanity also does this clothing. It does the clothing in the sense of when it's going into a restaurant, for example, it's looking at the restaurant. It's got nothing to do with food, but the environment, right, that it's in. For example, the waiters, the cleanliness of the plate, the cleanliness of the utensils, what the restaurant stands for, what are their values, right? All different stuff like that will affect the reception itself, the quality of the food, the quality of the enjoyment you're going to have on the reception itself. So with attraction and clothing, animals, vegetative and still, have the force of attraction, reception. And even in the human, it has that force of attraction, which is called the animal level in it. And then you have the human, the spirit level within the human, which is called clothing, bestowal, that only humans have. And that is why when an animal is hit by a car, the animal hits the car. It doesn't go to the front and try to hurt the driver. And that's because all they do is they see the attraction. They only see the situations. They are not able to get to conclusions of the environment affecting them. A human, on the other hand, if a car hits a human, he goes to the front and attacks the driver. It's like, but the car hit you, not the driver. Why are you attacking the driver? It's because he understands the cause and effect, that it's not the car. The car isn't actually doing anything. It's controlled by a driver. The ability for the human to go through that calculation is called clothing. But at the end of the day, he's dealing with it because he got hit by the car, which is attraction. So here's the interplay in humanity between attraction and clothing. We have the light, which is pleasure, power. You have the attraction, the reception of wanting that light to come in as a pleasure into the vessel. And the clothing, the bestowal around that desire defines how the quality and the quantity of that reception of that attraction. Right? It's the environment around the reception. That's why we call the society, we call it the environment, because it's going to affect how we're going to receive things. The development of attraction or clothing and clothing. So phase one, which is humanity, which is also called unformed, they deal with the external attraction. Right? They're trying to, that you have a vessel, you have a person, and all he cares about is filling his five senses. That's something external. The five senses are external. It can only clothe what it desires. That means it can only care about the restaurant if he's going to eat there, or if he will only care about the restaurant if he's going to inspect that restaurant. Right? He only cares about cars if he's going to buy a car, or he's getting hit by a car. That's where he'll care about cars. So you can only clothe what it desires. The clothing serves the desire. The reason he cares about the restaurant is because he wants to eat the food. And he only cares about the desire in the end of the day. He doesn't care about the clothing as in itself. He cares about the desire, what he's going to receive. Phase two, called spiritual society, chaos, external clothing. When we join the spiritual society, what they tell us is that you should want to clothe what you do not desire. That is, you are in humanity, you wanted to receive all the time, and in the spiritual society, they're going to tell you how to bestow, how to clothe things that you do not desire. You're going to have to care about groups you're not in. You're going to have to care about the world clear. You're going to have to care about humanity as a whole. You're going to have to care about a lot of things you don't actually have a desire for. They also do not want internal power because what they're thinking about is bestowing external filling. And their focus is on altruism without self-benefit. That means that what they want to care about is always about what they're going to give to others and not what they're going to receive for themselves. Phase three. Phase three is called the group, darkness, and they have an interplay of external clothing, which is what they were doing in phase two, and at the same time internal attraction. And that's why it's shown here as you've got the bestowal, the phase two arrow out, which is bestowal, and you've got the red, which is the idea of wanting to receive internal attraction. It desires internal power, but it's trying to still clothe, and even though it's more successful at clothing than phase two, it's still limited at its clothing capability. And it has a conflict between internal and external. It's like, what should I be doing? Should I be attracting more, or should I be bestowing more? External filling. And it has that interplay between the two. Then it reaches phase four. Phase four is when it's called the individual, the spirit phase. And it understands that all it really needs to do is just be intense internal attraction. It doesn't have to worry about the clothing. It has an intense desire for internal power, and it understands that clothing is the result, not the action. So it doesn't have to do the interplay anymore of receiving internal power and bestowing external filling. What it understands is, if I work on internal attraction and I receive the primacy of the creator, I swallow the entire reality within me and become the creator, then I can actually bestow. And then I can actually help other people.
Zakai, can I pause here for a minute?
Yeah, feel free.
You just shared that, and what I saw was a heat exchanger, or the characteristics of a heat exchanger in an air conditioning system. So, you know, you have to, there's this constant receiving to bestow process that's going on. And it can only bestow, exchange so much, and give so much based on, you know, what it's receiving. And its ability, capacity to bestow. So is that, how does that land in regards to a discernment, an impression? I'm having understanding between the upper and the lower. Can you comment on that?
Yes, all the movement between phase 1 to phase 2, phase 2 to phase 3, and phase 3 to phase 4 is through discernments. So how does phase 2 get to the conclusion that it has to have internal attraction? Well, it's gaining discernments on that. Someone tells them about it, or they read it somewhere, and then they're like, whoa, what's this, you know? You mean we need internal power? But what is this internal power? But I was doing external clothing. So you're saying if in order to increase the output of my external clothing, I need to work on internal power. But the problem of phase 2 is because it doesn't clean concepts, it tries to do altruism without self-benefit, which self-benefit is also cleaning concepts. It has to get to the conclusion that it's a failure at doing that external clothing. And only when it understands it's a failure of that, then it will want to actually clean its concepts and work on the self to clean the self in order to able to do that bestowal, that external clothing. Then it gets to a conclusion where, you know what, actually I just need this internal attraction. I don't need to worry about, I don't have to actually worry about the bestower at all. If I become the bestower, if I become the creator, then bestowing will be easy for me. So what I really need to worry about is this desire to become the creator. So I need to only focus on internal attraction. Because in phase 3, I had this conflict between them. So my desire for internal attraction to become the creator wasn't strong enough. And only in phase 4 does it become extremely, intensely, egoistically strong to receive the primacy of the creator. Then we have the phases of boundless light. So at the beginning, in phase 1 and phase 2, we basically get the first concepts. In phase 1, we get the concept of external, reception, attraction, the vessel, which is called his name, which means if I'm naming something, it's a definition, and there's a will to receive, to actually put a limitation on something and therefore give it a definition, because anytime I'm defining anything, I'm saying what it's not as well. If I'm defining a table as a table, I'm saying that table is not a plant, and it's not a computer, and it's not a chair. So every time I'm defining something, I'm not only saying what it is, I'm also saying what it's not. And then in phase 2, we learn about external bestowal, clothing, focusing on the clothing without the attraction, the light, and we focus on the creator, which is called he. We focus on the quality of bestowal.
His name is us, right?
His name is us, yes. His name is the will to receive that you have.
Right.
Then you reach phase 3, which is a combination. What that does is it takes the external reception, which was in phase 1, and converts it to be internal reception. And it converts it from being external attraction to internal attraction through the quality of bestowal that you got in phase 2. So the combination between them of phase 1 and phase 2 becomes internal power, the desire to receive internal power.
Sakai,
Yes.
is this the phase of boundless light? This is phase 4. This is Malhut going through the 4 phases in that and Dalet phase.
This is before. This is
4.1, 4.2, etc.
This is phase 3 is when you enter 3.1 to 3.4. Right? So if we go over it, phase 1 is when you're going from 1.1
No,
to 1.4.
excuse me. What I meant is
Yes.
you're saying the phases of boundless light. Is this Malhut in the beginning of Ein Sof?
No, this is going from Chochmah of Ein Sof, right? Even before Ein Sof, when Bala Sulam talks about the 4 phases before Ein Sof, right? So what led up to Ein Sof was phase 1, which is humanity, phase 2, spiritual society, then phase 3, internal power, and then finally phase 4. This is called Malchut Ein Sof. This is the phases. Okay. This is the state of boundless light. where it's internal already. He, which means the quality of bestowal, and his name, we could say the clothing and the reception, his name, is one. And that's called light and vessel. This is phase 4, where it becomes unified. One, unique and unified. And here you can see the summary of it. So again, we have phase 1, which is where we learned how to have external reception into our senses, attraction, vessel, his name. And in phase 2, in the spiritual society, we learned about external bestowal. We learned about clothing, the light, and he, the creator. In phase 3, we start to combine those qualities together, which takes it from external reception into internal power, into internal reception, which is called phase 3. And then in phase 4, we reach the unification of those two qualities to become as one, and then he and his name is one. Light and vessel are one.
We can't skip any of those phases. We can just go through.
You can't skip.
But we can go through one phase faster than another phase.
Exactly.
So where are we now?
Each person has a different phase.
Okay. So how do I know where I am, for example? How would I figure that out?
You can either ask someone who's higher than you. That's the best way. In the phase 3, you can already, if someone tells you where you are, you can also identify yourself where you are. And even if somebody else identifies you can actually confirm that for yourself. While in phase 2, if someone tells you where you are, you can't actually confirm it. So you have to reach phase 3 to confirm it for yourself.
Wow.
Does this make sense so far?
Yeah.
Zachariah, I have a question regarding the word clothing.
Yes.
And how it relates. You began explaining a vessel, a kli, and want it to be filled. And I'm assuming that when it's not filled, that's then a suffering, and that's then a pain. How does this relate to that pain point that one is actually trying to discover so that one can know exactly where to work towards? And how does clothing relate to it all?
The pain point is because, in phase 3, or towards, when you're in 1.3 and 1.4, that's when you start to actually care about the pain point mostly. And the pain point is because you actually want to become the creator. That's why it's in 2.3. So it's like in the darkness of chaos, you want to advance. And therefore you start caring about your pain point because you want to know how to release yourself from the shells, right? That the pain point is at the end of the day that the inner desire saying, I don't actually want to cross the barrier. That's the pain point. And all the discernments you do afterwards, they clean that pain point and they release you. So the reason why you have to know about the clothing, when you're in phase 1, all you care about is yourself. Phase 2 says, stop caring about yourself, start caring about others. What that does is it opens up your mind for other opportunities. You suddenly take into account things that you never took into account before. You weren't thinking about the world beforehand. Now you're suddenly thinking of the world. You're thinking, how do I correct the world? You're thinking of all this external bestowal, right? It increases your view. The problem is you can't actually do anything with that, right? So you've got that clothing, you're clothing the entire world, but you can't actually do anything with it. So it's like a failed clothing. You're trying to care and it just doesn't work out. And that's why you then advance to phase 3 and phase 4 to actually figure out, okay, how do I play with this interplay between receiving, because I know that if there's no light without a vessel, and obliquely, there's no light without a vessel, which means there's no clothing without a desire. So if I don't have a desire to clothe something, I won't be able to clothe it. So I think I want to clothe something, but I don't have an actual desire for it. So then this is the whole interplay. At the beginning, you're just wanting to receive, and then you're wanting to clothe, and then you're failing at clothing, and then you're figuring out, okay, I need to receive in order to be able to clothe. I need to clean my concepts in order to understand how to better clothe. And then in the end, you figure out in phase 4 that my problem is that I need to only focus, or the solution is I only need to focus on becoming the creator. Because when I become the creator and I get the quality of bestowal, then I can actually bestow. And beforehand, I'm just trying to bestow with the quality of reception.
I still don't understand.
Go ahead, Maria.
No, go ahead, Jeffrey. Go ahead.
Well, I just had a simple little thing, but it's a metric I heard that I tried to keep in mind is whatever I do is discernment, action, whatever, is it for me or is it for he?
Exactly. Is it for the reception, or is it for the quality of reception, or is it for the quality of bestowal?
Yeah, because we tend to kid ourselves, don't we?
Yes, you do. And it's because this is how we were born in this world. We were born in the quality of reception. So even when we're told about bestowal, we'll still think about it, that we can do it in the quality of reception. And we don't understand that we need a quality that we don't have, which is the quality of bestowal. And we only get that after the barrier.
Can't it be for both? Does it have to be one or the other?
Well, yeah, because it's your intention. Your intention is either your intention is either you're bestowing as the creator, as in the system, you're taking the whole system into account, or you're only taking your human form into account, only yourself is into account. So for example, what will happen many times when we try to bestow as a human being, let's say for example, we see a person, he looks hungry, we give him food, and that's it, we feel great with ourselves, you see, I bestowed. But who says that's good for the system? Maybe you've actually now delayed it, now he won't actually take care of himself, and he won't actually get a job, for example, or he won't be in a situation to have that desire to actually get a job. You've just killed it because you've just given him food. So does it mean that you have to let him die? No. What it means is get him a job. And that would be more like bestowal, because you would be giving him the ability for him to get food for himself. But then you wouldn't get the enjoyment of giving him food anymore, right? Because he would be able to stand on himself. So you could say it's even detrimental to get him a job, because then you will no longer enjoy giving him food for free.
Okay, so when I'm walking in the city and I see a homeless person or somebody on the street, I want to give them something, but I never have the intention of doing it for myself. I never walk away feeling like, wow, do I feel good about myself? It's all about, I feel it's necessary to do that for them because they're suffering. What is that I'm experiencing?
Well, why are you suffering? You're suffering because you feel the suffering.
I feel the suffering. Yeah, I feel that person.
But you're not feeling the person suffering. You're feeling your own suffering. That is,
okay.
If a terrorist was hungry, would you feed him?
With what?
If a terrorist was hungry, would you feed him?
Oh, that's a good question, because if I knew he was a terrorist,
you wouldn't feel bad that he's suffering. So therefore you wouldn't give him food.
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I can't answer. I don't know. I mean,
we all get
that's a moral obligation to help humanity, regardless of their state, to help each soul for us, because we're all connected in that way. So,
but that's unnecessary, because at the end of the day, who are you going to decide who you're going to give in humanity? Like humanity as a whole, that's nice, but there are different parts of humanity and different factions in humanity. And you might say to someone, I shouldn't provide for you because you're rich. He's like, yeah, but I have no money on me right now and I'm very hungry. It's like, well, you should have thought of it and bought your own food. So you're going to make different discernments. And at the end of the day, the people you're going to help are the people that actually make you feel that you need to help them. And those who you don't feel that you need to help them, you won't help them. That's what it means that we only bestow in the quality of reception. We only take ourselves into consideration. We only take our calculations into consideration. We don't take the calculations of the entire system into consideration. The highest level of parity is called giving a person a job.
So I'm doing this because I feel that person's pain, so it's about my reception. Is that what you're saying?
Say it again?
In other words, I'm helping somebody because I feel their pain. So that's my perception. I'm
not feeling their pain, you're feeling your own pain of seeing the situation.
Okay, and where am I in this scheme of things then? Which point am I at this point? What do I have to progress to then?
Well, the idea is that it doesn't mean you stop giving it to other people. Continue doing what you would do as a human. But the idea to understand that's not the bestowal that will actually get you past the goal. It's like you still have to go to the toilet, but you know that going to the toilet won't get you to past the goal. You understand that if you don't go to the toilet, you'll die.
So as a Kabbalist, I become more selfish in the corporeal sense. Is that right?
Yeah, but the idea is you'll become targeted. See, one of the funny things is that when we hear this, we think, wait a second, is that more selfish if I'm having extra calculations? It's like, no, it's more calculated, it's more targeted, it's more system-oriented. You're taking the system into account and not just taking your first emotion of, oh, I'll feel so good if I help this person. That's part of the revelation of evil, to realize that we're only actually helping ourselves the entire way. And only when you can become the creator, then you can look at the situation from a system perspective, and the calculation of if you're going to help someone or not, you're going to do on a system perspective, not on just me as a person perspective.
Define what that means, a system perspective. How would I be aware of a system perspective as opposed to the other?
That's what you get when you pass the barrier.
So you don't know then. We don't know. None of us know.
When you pass the barrier, you'll get that system perspective. On different situations, you'll know who to help. In reality, you'll probably help less people because you'll figure out that it's okay from the system perspective. If someone's dying, yes, you'll help him, but you'll probably help less people just asking for money on the streets.
So we can't define system perspective. If we would take that term and say this is the definition.
If we're looking for the system, taking the system into account means taking the goal into account. The goal is for everyone to reach adhesion with the creator. So that is what you're going to be focusing on, and not focusing on, do I give more money to a person in the street or not?
So could we say that becoming the creator and bestowing to humanity is more of a helping society, humanity, whatever word you want to use, your fellow man, your fellow friend here is what's the word I want? Perception that there is none else but him? Is that what I want to bestow? Is I want to present everything, every word that I come is only to help another realize that there is none else but him, and that it's all internal.
You want to help others able to help themselves, right?
So by doing that, by helping someone see that everything is inside, is helping.
Exactly.
What
You're turning them into an internally powered person. So instead of them having to, they won't be dependent on society. They'll use society. They won't be dependent on humanity. They'll use humanity. They'll know what is blocking their own desires to actually able to get what they want done.
So as a Kabbalist, how do you do that to somebody who's sitting on a bench and they haven't washed in days, and you go help? How do you turn them into a person, into somebody that's going to help themselves? I mean, if you help them, they're even more dependent because they're sitting there waiting for somebody to do that. So how do you approach it so that you turn them around with your action to turn them into somebody who's completely,
part of the thing is that you'll start prioritizing, and you'll start to focus on who can help first. So you'll help those who actually desire to become the creator first. Then you'll work on those who desire to bestow but don't actually want to become the creator. And then finally, you'll work on those who just want to receive and don't even want to bestow.
How do we know the difference when we see somebody? How do we know the state they're in?
You'll able to sense the states of people around you. That's one of the, you could say, the powers you get. As the creator, you get the ability to sense people's states and know what they're in and actually how to help them. Is
that because we clean our concepts, or what is it that gets us to that?
The result of cleaning your concepts is a desire, and then you get that desire of bestowal, and then you can sense things. It's like when you're working in any profession, right? The more you work in it, the more you sense things in that profession, right? If you're working with air conditioners, you'll sense problems with air conditioners even without even looking at them. You're able to go to a room and say, "There's a problem with air conditioners." Like, how did you know I even had an air conditioner? It's like I can sense the air, the particles. Something's wrong with your air conditioner. It's like, but how did you know? Well, I sensed it because it became important to me. I learned about it. I practiced it, and I became very sensitive to those issues. So if you're going to become the creator, and you become the creator, you can be very sensitive to bestowing issues, to cleaning concept issues. That's going to be your profession.
That makes sense. That's okay. So you can do that. You're in technology, so you can you can actually sense an environment and know exactly what's wrong. You can pinpoint it and jump through barriers, so to speak, to know exactly what's going on.
Exactly. Like someone has a problem, at work, and they many times will call me because I can look at a situation that I probably even haven't experienced before, but very quickly can figure out what the problem is. It's like, but I never experienced that problem before. How can I know the solution? It's because, I do didactic thinking, and I figure out what probably the problem could be. And then I say, the problem is probably this. And they check it and they're like, wow, how did you know? I've been looking for days for this. I'm like, yeah, practice makes perfect.
So how do I purposefully get to that state if I want to get there? By cleaning concepts? What do I focus?
By cleaning concepts. Yes, the whole way. It's like, how do you get better at computers? How do you get better at fixing air conditioners? Practice makes perfect, which means collecting discernments. As we've already been learning how to collect discernments. We just haven't been taught how to collect discernments on the right goal.
Good discernments.
Exactly. True discernments.
Write an article on that, Kaya.
Come on, let's do that.
I did find your video that had the glue for the mind, though, the emotions, glue for the mind. That was good.
It's a good saying. The emotions are the glue for the mind.
Right. Like you say, we don't remember it until we get emotionally involved.
That is why you can see that if someone loves his profession, he can be so much more successful at it because he's emotional about the discernments he gets, right?
As a classical guitarist, it was pure emotion,
Lee loves to talk about, electronics and stuff like that because he's passionate about it.
Right.
So he has lots of discernments on them. And that's why he will always give examples in that area because that's what he's passionate about. And those are the discernments he's collecting. And he has that emotion to be the glue of keeping those discernments in his mind. Or you could have
and I look at it through the music lens.
Exactly. And you could have someone who has been more years in the profession than me, but has no clue what he's talking about because he's not passionate about his job and he just wants to get home each day. And therefore he'll probably won't give those discernments as examples.
Well, that's it. When you're emotionally evolved, you're going to invest the time and the effort,
Exactly.
And like you say, like you say, what you're doing is refining our focus.
Yes.
And that's wonderful. Rather than being all dispersed, we are becoming much more focused.
Exactly. And that's why I constantly go back and clean the slides and clean the articles and clean the concepts and clean the translations to always focus more and more and more and allow people to see where they're getting to and how can they get there as quick as possible. Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. Thank you.
Thank you. Because I do this with you together.
Could I add something in reference to Paul's question about how do you know? I guess when he was asking that question, I was thinking about the movie thought where if you can imagine like you're in a movie and all the actors are participating and the person that's homeless and on the side of the street is an actor as well. And it's as if, you look at the homeless, hungry person and they look at you. And even though internally both of you know that this is a performance, that feeling of that sensation of pain that he's not eating isn't there. It's like, he's there playing a part. And I'm just feeling that kind of gives a better picture maybe of that end state.
All right, let's continue. So now we're getting to the meat of things, the Holy Ori. Reason for passing the barrier. The reason for creation was the revelation of his names and appellations. Number 2, when it rose upon his simple Ratzon, desire, to create the Olamot, worlds, and emanate the Netzalim, emanated, to bring the perfection of his deeds, his names and appellations to light, which was the reason of the creation of the Olamot, worlds. So the reason why we want to cross the barrier is so that we can reveal the names and appellations. So we're in a world. In order to reveal what we have and actually discern things, we want to go out and become the creator, and then we can start to take bits and bring it into us and say, oh, what is this? What is that? What is that? And each time we're doing that, we're giving it a name, an appellation to the light, to the clothing that we bought of the entire reality within us.
Aren't we at the emanated? The creature is the emanated.
So the idea is that you've got the emanator and emanated is basically cause and consequence before the barrier. And then when you pass the barrier, then you become the Boer, the creator, and the Nivra, the creation. That is, you look at your will to receive from above. So you're the creator, right? The quality bestowal, looking down on your will to receive, the creation. Bala Salam commentary. Simple desire. When it rose upon his simple desire, his simple ratzon, desire. Number 30. We need not wonder how there is a ratzon, desire in Ein Sof, boundless, who is higher than any notion, to which we can say rose upon his simple ratzon, desire. You should comprehend what has been said above, that in every Ne'etzal emanated there is by necessity a will to receive the Shefa abundance from the Ma'atzil emanator. However, in Ein Sof, boundless, it is a simple ratzon, desire, because he is one and his name one. The Or, light, in Ein Sof, boundless, is called he, and the will to receive is called his name, and they are simple unity without any form of separation. However, we should not resemble the unity and separation discussed here with corporal unity and separation that are distinguished by motion, nearness, and distance. That is because the spiritual essence does not take up any time.
Yeah, because we can't see a separation in spirituality because there's no time and space and distance. So it's about form, right?
Well, it's about states. The idea is that, it's not talking about physical space as in, I'm moving from, one town to another. We're talking about my perception of reality. And in the states I go through, have got nothing to do with physical space. Time and motion, I could talk to you about a state, and you could, go through it in July, and somebody else could go through it in October. So it's not set to a specific time frame.
But when we talk about form of separation, we're talking about equivalence of form, aren't we? Because in spirituality, we can't tell, there's only difference of form. We can't see separation. So it's about equivalence of form. Is that correct?
Exactly. And this whole question is asking, if at phase 4, before the barrier, you have the will to receive, right, which is extremely strong, and you have the clothing, right, which is, the light. How can it be that they're one? How can it be that he, the light, the clothing you've done, and his name, the reception of the primacy of the Creator, are one? How could they be one? Are they separate? Are they totally the opposite? One is trying to receive everything, and one is trying to clothe everything, to go outside of itself. So you've got extreme reception and extreme bestowal, clothing. How could they be one? How could there be no separation? And how there is simple unity without any form of separation? And this is what this is talking about, and that's why I gave the introduction to explain what is it we mean when we say he is one and his name is one. What is the light? What is desire? Right? And what is the differences between them? So we said light is clothing before the barrier, and desire is that desire to receive the primacy of the Creator. Change of form. Having said that, you should know that separation in spirituality occurs only by means of shinui tzura, change of form. Thus, if one spiritual thing acquires an additional tzura form that is unlike its current tzura form, it stops being one and becomes two separate entities. The distance from each other is measured by the oppositeness of their forms. Just as corporeal entities connect and separate through proximity and remoteness, so spiritual entities connect and separate according to their difference and equivalence of form. The shinui tzura, change of form, separates them from one another, and the shtavut tzura, equivalence of form, brings them together. Remember that, for it is the key element to this wisdom. Now you will understand the meaning of the aforementioned words, he is one and his name one, and the simple unity we are so meticulous about in Ein Sof boundless. Indeed, this unity is of the wonders of his almightiness. Right? So if we're saying that everything which is, there's a change of form in spirituality means that they're different, right? If I have sweet and sour, there's a change of form between them. If I have good and bad, there's a change of form between them. And the more good it is, it's going to be far away from the more bad it is, right? If I'm happy or sad, the more I'm happy, the more I look at sadness and I see it as the total opposite, right? So that's change of form. So then the question is, how is he is one and his name one? Since we're talking about reception and bestowal, how can they be in simple unity, right? Opposition. We have witnessed the difference between the Matzil emanator and the Netzal emanated that was formed by Tzura, form, of that will to receive that exists in the Netzal emanated and not in the Matzil emanator. Because of that Shinui Tzura, change of form, the Netzal emanated became separated from the Matzil emanator and acquired its own separate name, meaning Netzal emanated and not Matzil emanator. The above explanation might mislead us into thinking that Or Ein Sof boundless light called He is not entirely adherent with Ein Sof boundless called his name, meaning the will to receive the Or, light, and the Shefa, abundance, called He. That is because the Or Elyon, upper light, that extends from his Atzmut essence called He has but one attribute to bestow, and none of the Tzura form of the will to receive. Right? So you would think that the will to receive and the will to bestow at boundless light would be separate from each other. How do we say that they're in simple unity? Unity. However, Ein Sof boundless, called his name, which does have a will to receive, is therefore different from the Or Elyon, the upper light, which has no will to receive whatsoever, as has been explained. And we know that Shinui Tzura, change of form, separates. However, the Midrash and the Rav, the Holy Ari, tell us that this is not so. Instead, he is one, and his name one, in simple unity, means that there is no difference between them. Although there is necessarily a difference of form between he and his name, it is nevertheless completely inactive there. We do not understand it, but it is undoubtedly so. It is said about that there is no perception or thought in Ein Sof boundless whatsoever, since this matter is above our mind, which will be discussed further in the next item. And to give you a clue of how you can understand this, in phase 3, right? In phase 2, it said, we're focusing on bestowal, and when unlike humanity, which is focusing on reception, and we're constantly told about by the society how we should be in bestowal and not in reception, right? Phase 3 comes and says, you have to actually have an interplay between reception and bestowal. Phase 4 comes to the conclusion that if it only focuses on reception, what is it trying to receive? It's trying to receive the primacy of the Creator. What does the Creator do? It bestows. So that means if I want to receive the primacy of the Creator, the result of it will be that I'll clothe the entire reality. And then even though you could say there's two forms here, there's receiving the primacy of the Creator, and there's the bestowal, which is the light, which is the clothing of the entire reality. But because the clothing is a result of the action of reception, that is why there's considered no difference of form, because they're connected to each other. One of the examples that you could give is when a dentist is hurting a patient, we don't call it that he's hurting the patient, even though he is. Why do we say he's not hurting the patient, he's helping the patient? Because his goal is to help the patient. And even though he's hurting him, that's not the goal of what he wants to do. What he really wants to do is help the patient, and he does it through pain. But the pain is not the goal. And therefore, you could say that the action of pain that he's causing to the patient and the result of actually helping the patient are one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you should add that in here. That's a great explanation.
Right, and we see the same as being as parents, where we're educating our kids. Sometimes we'll cause pain to the kids. So you could think that the pain that you're causing the kid and the goal, which is to help the kid, would be in separation of form. And the reason they're not in separation of form is because your goal of causing the kid pain is in order to help him. And therefore, even though there's a difference of form between he and his name, is nevertheless completely inactive there. What do you think?
Well, what do we say when the Ari and said that it's not so? How do we know it's not so? Because the Ari said it? How do we know if this is scientific? How do we prove that?
When you get to that phase, you'll be able to prove that. You'll feel it. And you'll feel that even though someone could say to you, the most egoistic person ever, and who do you think you are that you want to become the creator? You understand that there's no separation of form there between you and the creator.
Zakai, when the creator restricted himself, is this what you're referring to as this void, this separation, and during our discernment, when one notices that disparity of form or a contradiction, to unite them, are you using, is one using the concept that there is none else besides him as like a reminder that they are, it's just a matter of our perception?
Well, what we're talking about here is we're not just talking about, there's a creator and there's me. Remember that we understand that we're completely controlled by the creator. What we're talking about here is we're talking about, and that's why I gave the introduction, of when we're talking about he, we're talking about the clothing. I'm caring about the entire world, right? That's the clothing. And then you've got the reception is I want to become the creator. I want to become the creator. It's like if you're trying to bestow and helping others, why are you caring about yourself? Isn't there separation of form there between caring about everything and you wanting to become something? And the idea is, no, because I want to care about everyone. That means I want to become the creator. I want to get that quality of bestowal in order to care for everyone. And therefore, even though you would say there's a difference between me wanting to become the creator and caring about everyone, it's completely inactive there. There's no separation of form there, because the reason why I want to become the creator is in order to help everyone and help myself, because I'm in the system as well. Any final questions? I think it's pretty straightforward. I think we'll end here and enter the after party.